It's a very common question. So the report was that you were kind of present with your experience, and then you found, as things were starting to get a bit still, that you would have an insight or about kind of about the present context, an idea about something that you're dealing with that seemed rich and potentially worth following. And whether that was okay to kind of go with that, or whether, but the instructions seem to be to come back to being in the present. So how do you work with that? Because now you're creating a kind of conflict. Do I stay here in the present, or do I go along with this idea? Is that a fair?
Yeah, sort of what can you say about the two
Yeah.
destinations
Yeah.
of those two paths?
Yeah, so there, and each is a kind of different destination, and it's true. So the first thing to say is that very, very normal that as we start to get still and settled, that ideas start to pop up. Good ideas, actually. That's where creativity comes from. A lot of its creativity comes a lot from stillness. You know, we get settled, and all of a sudden, we're no longer in the same track. And now all these other potential ideas that are on different tracks start to potentially emerge in our experience, which is why people get so many insights for problem solving while they're meditating or at sleep onset. And and it's true that following those ideas can be really productive and rich. It's a whole way of getting insight around things that we're working with. So in meditation, it's always about what is the instruction. The point of this practice and the instruction is can we just be with our direct experience and not need to follow off on these different trails? That we have 23 other hours of the day to be able to do that. So technically with this instruction, it was like if that happened, it would be, okay, you notice that's happened, you're aware, and it's good insight to see that's there. And then you kind of like let that be there, and then we come back to whatever the object was or the general place of awareness. Only because to go into that place, we start to lose the awareness. We can kind of get lost inside the idea and working out the idea. Technically, if you could stay as perfectly panoramically aware of that idea, you could kind of stay with that as your meditation object. It's just a trickier territory, but it could happen. So what my teacher Shinzen says about creative ideas is that, you know, they'll come back, that you kind of let them go and come back to whatever your main technique is, because that's where, after all, we're building up this capacity to be concentrated on what we want to pay attention to. We're building up our equanimity, we're building up our clarity. These skills build up every time. But, he says, if it's a really great idea, then maybe once in a while you might want to stick with it for a few minutes, feel it out, maybe write it down here. The problem is when you open that doorway, you know, when I used to do this, when I'd sit, I would have ideas all the time come up, usually about meditation in the mind, because that's what I was interested in, and I would write them down in my journal, and then I spent very little time meditating. Mostly I was just writing about my ideas about meditation. So at a certain point I was like, okay, it's time to relax on that front. So does that make sense as a response? So I guess it's a little bit around your intention. Set the intention at the beginning of the practice. I want to stay with this technique and really develop these skills. And if ideas come, and that's why it's often helpful at the beginning to kind of do an inventory of what distractions will be. I know myself, I know I'll have these ideas, or I know that I'll be wondering if I'm doing it right, or I'll know that I'm going to be ruminating about this particular person. You kind of prime ahead of time that could happen. And then you set your intention to stay with your direct experience and not follow those. Or you sit down with a meditation and say, I'm going to make this a creativity meditation. I'm going to just sit and be with my breath in general, but if interesting ideas come, I'll let myself pursue them because that's my intention for this sit.